Hey, I am Dr. Carolyn Padalino, UTC Physical Therapy Program faculty. Look forward to sharing a bit about my journey to this point and answering any questions that I may be able to answer for you.
And my name is Rebecca Littleton. I am the program coordinator for physical therapy and occupational therapy here at UTC. So I do admissions for both of those programs. And I'm always happy to answer questions that you have about the program here and the admissions process, what kinds of things you need to do to prepare and that sort of thing.
Awesome. So we will get started, and Carolyn, you have the floor. Tell us about what it's like to be a physical therapist and share us all of your wisdom, all of your insights.
Well, starting back in I'm just kidding. Say that when I was told that I needed to pick a profession in life, my dad's a financial advisor. My sister was in school to be an accountant. My mother was also in school as an adult student to be an accountant. And the last thing I wanted to do was sit behind a computer and a desk all day. Oh, what do I do now? Whoops. And that's how I ended up. That was what started me looking towards some other path. And then I was a swim coach, assistant swim coach for Summer League, and taught swim lessons and a lifeguard. And when I decided that I probably wouldn't make enough money for a living as a swim coach, and what could I do? What was it about swimming that I loved? Coaching, they always gave me the 8 and unders because no one else has the patience to teach a 5-year-old how to do butterfly. And so I was trying to figure out, why do I love this so much? And I realized that I loved getting to teach people new skills or correct technique and see their progress, their improvement, and get to be a part of that experience. So then where in real life, the rest of life, could I do that and actually get paid for it? And in the meantime, had what's it called? Like an advisement session at school where they brought in people in different fields and they spoke about what they did and then broke out into little groups to ask questions. And when somebody talked about PT, I thought, ooh, now that makes a lot of sense. I never had PT. I did not get injured and require physical therapy. That's how probably 90% of people get to this field, is because they or someone they know got injured and went to PT and it sounded very interesting. That was not me. I had switched high schools from a private school life until 10th grade, don't judge me, to Hickson High School my junior year of high school. And lo and behold, they had a physiology class where we dissected minks or cats. No, I don't remember. I think we dissected cats, and we had to learn all of the bony anatomy and muscles and attachments. And I loved it, and I was good at it, and it made sense. And so that was the second thing that added into, yes, I want to do PT when I grow up. And then I called UTC as a senior in high school when they placed me in calculus, and I hadn't had math for a whole year because we did a block schedule. If y'all had to do that, I'm sorry for you. And the calculus was nothing. She said, this should all be review day 1. I was like, I didn't learn any of this in pre-cal, I promise you. I called UTC, found out they did not require calculus for PT school, and promptly dropped it. So one thing I will tell you into getting to PT school is you really need to make a concerted effort that for every program in which you're interested, you know all of their prerequisites and focus on those. Do those well, focus on those well, spend your time there. If you don't make a good grade, but you still love it and you're passionate, but for some reason it doesn't go well, don't be discouraged. Retake the class, because ultimately you have to have good grades in those prereqs to get accepted to any program. So I knew as a senior in high school that I needed to find out what the list of prerequisites was and focus on those. Personally, I didn't mess around and take things like intro to accounting just because it would have been interesting. I kind of wish I had, but I also didn't want to risk a C. So that was how I figured that one out. And then now that you have Teresa, we didn't have someone like Teresa when I was in school. And historically, for example, my sister and I signed up for a canoeing class before I started my freshman year. And in the class, Ron Nelson made us all go around and say why we were taking the class. And more than half the class said I was supposed to graduate in May. I got to my advisor just before graduation and found out I was missing credit hours. How do you get to the very end and find out your missing credit hours? How are the students not checking it themselves every semester to make sure they're on track, make sure they've got what they need? So the next thing I'll tell you to success of getting into PT school is take personal responsibility to make sure that you are on track for what's required rather than trusting anyone outside of you, except maybe Teresa, because I'm sure she's awesome, to get you there. So making sure, literally every semester I would get a new checklist form from the UTC PT program, and I'd go back through and recheck off everything that I had taken and what I had left. I'd look at the schedule and see what was offered in spring versus fall. How did I need to coordinate and organize it? And then as far as getting into the program, back then we had interviews. I apologize, we don't have interviews anymore. We didn't have to do the GRE. I'm not going to brag about that. You'll hate me. So there were a lot of things that were different, but it was still a competitive program. So making sure that you know deadlines, you meet deadlines. There's no flexibility in the medical world for missing things and saying whoops. So start it now in undergrad or pre-PT land, making sure that you are fully aware and take personal responsibility for all those deadlines. That will go a long way as well, and people write recommendations for you. So in knowing that I wanted to do PT and being interested in pediatrics, because I love the small children, I thought, I still do love the small children, just not their grown-ups that come with them. I ended up, I called Children's at the time they let people observe. Y'all might have a tough time right now going into observe at places because a lot of places just aren't welcoming students because of they want to decrease the risk of exposure to their patients right now. Rightfully so. So I know programs are talking about that, what to do to accommodate that across the board. Ultimately, I ended up observing. Observing is basically like a job interview. You've got to go in, making the best impression possible, staying engaged and interested. If you stand back with your arms across your chest, it will not go well. So just being engaged and speaking with the patients in a way that doesn't interrupt the treatment, asking questions about what you're seeing. So appearing and being engaged is important. And then I got into PT school. I was one of the lucky ones and finished my degree in 2005 through UPC. So I'm an undergrad alum and a DPT alum, and now I work here. I just can't seem to get away. It's like a whirling vortex. You're just sucked in. But that's Chattanooga, so you'll figure that out if you're not from here. So what's next? So then coming out of school, I still thought I loved the children's. So I went into pediatrics. I worked for a company that had a really dynamic experience at the time. We did hippotherapy, which is children on horses. So I worked at a barn twice a week at night and put children on horseback. It's amazing how much it elicits. Their sensory system helps calm them. Children who are nonverbal all of a sudden start to speak. Children who are loosey-goosey or have terrible control all of a sudden have great trunk control. It's pretty amazing. And then we also did aquatic therapy in the summers at the pool. So that was fun. We did Babies Can't Wait. And at the time it was children 3 and under in Georgia are seen in their home or their natural environment, so daycare. And I also had all of the Catoosa County schools by myself as a new grad, don't recommend that. And also saw outpatients through the clinic. So I very quickly learned that while I loved the small children and I was much more of a natural hands-on person. I'm a toucher. So, you know, personal bubbles are kind of non-existent in PT world. So handling skills for small child were great. Learning that was great. When I realized that I did not have the patience required for long-term commitments with parents who did not do what was needed or made up issues in children who did not have them. I'm one of those, I say, when I know it's time to move on, I just feel it. And I know something's coming. I make myself open to new situations, and then sure enough, something comes along. I ended up switching into skilled nursing facility, which I never thought I would ever do, because when I was little at church, they made us go with choir and sing in the nursing home, and it smelled bad and people pinched your cheeks, and I didn't want to be hugged by strangers, because stranger danger. So I went to work in skilled nursing and loved it. And oh my word, I learned week 1, you do not ask a person in their 80s, a sweet woman, if she ever worked outside the home, because most of those women did, because and somebody had to run the country. So one of my patients was one of the architects of the B-2 bomber. You get some of the most amazing stories out of your patients in the skilled nursing facility. My handling skills from pediatrics were on target as far as with older people who can't follow commands. It was super helpful that I had that hands-on skill. A lot of people who only went into skilled nursing or hospitals never really developed or even just handled outpatient orthopedics. So did that for a year, ended up being the assistant rehab manager there, and then got suckered into being a rehab manager for the company for 3 years. In those 3 years, we closed one facility, opened a new one. So I wanted to peace out on management life. I just wanted to do my job and go home. That's all I ever wanted to do. But when people tell you you're good at stuff, you get motivated and then you forget you don't have to do something just because you're good at it. You can choose to say no, thank you. So I ended up opening a new rehab facility, got to hire all the staff and do the training, pick out equipment. It was a great experience, but after a year, I was still done being in charge. My staff were great. I, as a PT, hired my staff. When I interviewed them, I said, the expectation in this facility is high. If you cannot answer every call light you pass, smile and greet every person you pass, pick up every piece of trash in the hall, and remember where you're going, and I like you enough to offer you this position, please turn it down because it will not go well. So being able to recognize your own boundaries and know what you're good at and what you're not good at will also serve you in PT life, because you need to know if something is outside of your comfort zone. And not that you can't be stretched, but that if you just know it's going to be a problem, you don't want to commit to something and then it go poorly, because those stories do make the rounds. So after stepping down, I floated a little bit for that company, landed in one more facility, and then realized it was time to move on and ended up in outpatient orthopedics. In outpatient orthopedics, when I met the manager, I said, hi. It was actually at a continuing ed. And I told her, I ran into somebody that I knew. He said, talk to her if you're serious about it. And I said, I recognize that I have 0 outpatient orthopedic experience outside of my PT education. But I think if you get to see my resume, you'll find that no matter what I go to, I will give 110%. So if there's a position for me with your company, I will do everything I can to be the best PT I can be. And she said, I ended up having an interview with her later that week. And she said, I hire personality, not skills. I can teach skills, but I can't teach personality. So being open to that input and feedback from people about how you might come across, what your body language says, what your facial expressions say. I probably should listen more to my husband than I do my patients, because I'm super sweet to my patients. I want them to work with me. But learning and paying attention to those kinds of things is really important, because if you are in a situation where you're having a conflict, you have to be a bit of a chameleon in PT land. You have to be able to fit other people's needs to get them to want to work with you. If I have a patient who's abrupt or harsh, I cut off the jokes and I'm much more direct, and I overkill on the medical terminology so that I earn their respect. And then I slowly start throwing the jokes back in until they soften up. If they're a jokester day one and they're not paying attention, I zip it up. Like, we got to focus. And then once they learn the importance, we open it back up. So being able to see what your patient needs to get the best out of them and being able to accommodate that. There's a lot of soft skills in PT land that get missed when it comes to the academic requirements getting into the program. But it's definitely something to pay attention to. And then I knew I was supposed to leave outpatient ortho, but I didn't know it was next. So I called a buddy who had traveled and was currently working in a hospital, because I realized my personal boundary is I love assessments and evaluations. I will watch you walk across the room and tell you everything you need to do to fix yourself. But what I don't love is the 1 hour, 5 days a week, even 3 days a week is sometimes a little too much with a person. I'm just ready to send you on to somebody else and let them develop the relationship. I just want to fix you. So I realized that about myself, and the hospital and travel therapy were great ways to do that. And in the meantime, I received notification that this position was open. And here I am now as the Director of Clinical Education, a short 15 years after graduating from the program, an assistant professor for the Doctor of Physical Therapy program. So that is what made me interested in PT, how I focused my education and skills to get accepted once I got through all the different experiences that I gained. I tell students all the time, there's no wrong path once you get into PT. You could think you're never going to do inpatient rehab, go there right out of school and love it and stay forever. I had a dude who told me, a male student, who told me that he was only outpatient ortho. And within a week of being in the hospital, he was like, this is what I want. I'm done. I want to go to acute care. So people swing all the time, and that's totally fine. Nobody in PT land judges you for having a lengthy resume, depending on the reason and rationale for why you left every job. So if you saw my resume and how many different jobs I've held in the past 15 years, it's a lot. But ultimately, there's always a reason and a rationale for each move. So I think that is the long, short version of it. Do y'all have any specific questions for me, or Rebecca and Teresa, if nobody else does? If y'all thought of anything I could speak to better, feel free to let me know.
Recording again. Oh, but I should share my screen. That should probably be the first thing I do. Okay, everyone can see physical therapy, occupational therapy showcase. Fantastic. All right. So again, presented by me and our wonderful guest speakers. So here's my contact information. As you can see from behind me, I'm not in my office. I am working from home. Some of you heard my knee troubles, so I am still out of the office. So please feel free to email me if you want to set up a pre-health advising appointment, if you have questions. My contact info, email is best, phone is secondary, but it is there, and then the office location. So one day when we are all back together, you guys can come visit. And then here's Rebecca's contact information, her email address, and then Carolyn's email address as well. So again, big thanks to them. So the purpose of this lovely series is that we're going to talk about what makes a good application for a PT or an OT program, how to review schools for best fit. We've already touched on that a little bit earlier about wanting to make sure that you find the one that works best for you, or the ones, and then overview the programs in the region. So Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama are the bulk of the programs where UTC students go. A lot of it has to do with residency. Georgia especially really loves to give incentives to its residents. So if you are a Georgia resident, you definitely want to take note of these programs because they're going to save you a lot of money. So first I want to go over some terms, because if you have not noticed already, healthcare is a bit like the military. We love our acronyms. All the acronyms all the time. So we're going to run through these, and again, I'm going to send you guys the presentation so you will have it, so you do not have to write it all down. So the first is OT, or an OTR. That's an occupational therapist, and they deal with the assessment and intervention, developing different activities and recovery plans for folks, and so that's an OT. So an OTA is an occupational therapy assistant. So that is the person that works in congruence with the OT. It is not as much schooling, but it is also not as much responsibility. A COTA is a certified occupational therapist. Their roles are exactly the same. They do the same things. The only difference is a COTA is registered with the National Board for Certification, and OTA is not. So if you're looking at getting hour requirements, or you're looking at, different positions, the COTA may be more beneficial than the OTA. And then the AOTA, I'm telling you, these acronyms, is the American Occupational Therapy Association. This is where you can search for all certified programs. This is where you can access the application. And I actually have this linked on the pre-health webpage. So oh, yeah, go ahead.
How difficult would it be to go from an assistant to an actual therapist?
It depends. So some programs have pathways that will help people. Others, it's a completely different process. Rebecca may have a little bit more insight on this.
Yeah, I mean, to be a COTA first and then an OT doesn't really benefit you. It doesn't give you like any kind of advantage or whatever as far as going into an OT program. The COTA in most places is a 2-year degree at a community college, and it's an applied associate's degree, which means most of those credits will not transfer over for your bachelor's degree. You have to have a bachelor's degree to enter into an OT program. They're all master's or doctoral level. So before you can enter those programs, in most cases, you have to have the bachelor's degree. So if you're looking at going like straight through or whatever, it may take you longer. Now, some people may go the CODA route because that's what they think they want to do, and then they get into it and they decide, no, I really want to be an OT, and then they'll go back and finish a bachelor's degree and apply and go into an OT program. But it's certainly not necessary to get that CODA degree first.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, if you don't know if you want to necessarily be the therapist first, and you see how everything works, if it would make sense to start as an assistant.
My recommendation, instead of going through that program and taking the exam and everything to be a certified assistant, would be just to do the observation hours. Find a place where you can observe and get those hours in where you can work both with an OT and a CODA, and talk to them about what is the difference between what you do and what the OT does. What do you like about your job? What do you not like about your job for both of them, and spend some time in a setting with both of them where you can see them at the same time and see what the differences are. And I think that would be long-term more beneficial than you spending like 2 years in a program and then having to go on and get your bachelor's and then going to have to go on and get your master's or your doctorate.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
And like I said, there are a few oddball programs. They are few and far between that have those sort of pathways. But definitely the majority, as Rebecca said, it's not necessary. It'll take you longer, but do what you want. So the OTCAS and the OTACAS, again, they love their acronyms. So the OTCAS is the Occupational Therapy Centralized Application Service. The same thing with PT. You can see further down the PT CAS. When you apply to these programs, you're not filling out individual applications like you may have done when you applied to college. You fill out one application, and all those materials go to all the schools that you designate you want that stuff sent to. So it's really important to note, you will be asked to provide a personal statement or a personal essay or letter of intent. It goes by many things, but it is all the same thing. And sort of, why do you want to do what you want to do? Be very, very mindful that when you get to that application process, you are not uploading the letter for why you think UTC is the greatest and most wonderful program and pales in comparison to all the other programs to your OTCAS or your PT-CAS application, and then apply to 6 schools. Because those 5 other schools will say, well, if you love UTC so much, then okay, we're gonna let UTC take you and we're gonna move on to other applicants. And that's probably not your intention. So you wanna make sure that that statement is very much about why you wanna be a physical therapist or why you want to be an occupational therapist, and really leave the school out of it. A lot of schools will do what it's called a secondary application, where they will send you an application that is directly from that program, where they will ask you more program affiliated questions. And a lot of times those applications will ask for some sort of personal statement or letter as to why this program. And that is when you can just say, oh my gosh, love this program, I love this community, and that's really going to help you. But yeah, do not put your school-specific letter on those centralized applications.
Yeah, can I interject something really quickly?
Absolutely.
Same thing for your references. When you talk to whoever is going to provide a reference for you, and different schools want different people. Some of them want professors, some of them want therapists. It could be an advisor, lots of different people. Whoever you have do your reference, make sure that they understand as well that this reference is going to go to every school that you apply to. So you don't want them to say, so-and-so has been such a fabulous student here at UTC, and I think they're going to go great in our PT program. Because that's also going to go to Memphis, Tennessee State, ETSU, whoever you apply to, they're all going to see all of the references. So you want to make sure that that reference is also very non-specific as far as what school is your first choice.
And so there are lots of webinars, and I do a lot of other programming to really dissect the OATCAS and the PTCAS. So when you guys get to the point where you're ready to start filling that bad boy out, definitely reach out, definitely look at those programming, because these application services are not for the faint of heart. They're complicated. It's a lot. This is not something you're going to sit down and do in 20 minutes on a Saturday afternoon. This takes a lot of prep. And so that's why we're having this program. And that's why, you know, I exist, is to help make sure that by the time Rebecca sees your stuff, it's fantabulous and wonderful. And there would be no reason why we wouldn't want you at UTC, or no reason that any other program wouldn't want you. So PT obviously is the abbreviation for physical therapist, and a PTA, very much like an OT and OTA, that's the PT assistant. Again, very similar in the structure. You don't have to be a PTA before you're a PT. It's not necessarily a faster route, but it is, you know, there should you wish for it. APTA is the American Physical Therapy Association. Every healthcare program has a official association. And again, there is a search functionality that I have linked to the pre-health website, and I will show you guys. We called it by its acronym, the GRE. It's the Graduate Record Exam. And this is the standardized test that's required for most physical therapy, occupational therapy, and athletic training programs in the US. A note about the GRE, unlike something like the MCAT, which is for medical school, or the DAT, which is for dental school, the GRE is not subject specific. The folks that take the GRE that are looking to go to PT and OT programs are the same. It's the same test that history majors are taking to do PhD programs in history, and mathematicians are taking to do graduate programs in math. It's a standard exam, and a lot of it, especially the science portion, is looking at how you think about science as well as the actual content. But this is not an exam that's going to ask you extensive anatomy and physiology or exercise physiology type content. That does not mean it is not hard. That does not mean you should not prepare for it, but you are not going to be expected to know OT and PT specific content for this test. When we start talking about the programs, there are a lot of acronyms for the different degrees. So a DPT is a Doctor of Physical Therapy. You are going to see, you know, for those of you going into physical therapy, you guys have it easy. Most of the programs at the graduate level are DPT programs. Occupational therapy folks, you have a little bit more of a choice, a little bit more of a deciphering to do. So an ODT is a Doctor of Occupational Therapy. This is sort of the highest level. You are the big dog on campus. You know the most things. And so a lot of doctoral programs are entry level, like our program, where you go from undergrad into a doctoral program. You're not required to do a graduate degree first. Now, there are ODT programs that you do have to have a master's degree in occupational therapy before you can go into the program. So as you're looking at occupational therapy graduate programs, you want to make sure that you're very aware of the language and you're not looking at a non-entry level ODT program. So there are really two major graduate degrees. There's an MOT, Master of Occupational Therapy, and an MSOT, Master of Science of Occupational Therapy. They're the same. There's not really any, as far as like patient care and job ability, there's not a difference. The MSOTs, it's a little bit more research focused. So if you're thinking about maybe wanting to do teaching or a more research heavy program, then an MSOT might be a better route for you. But as far as content and patient care, these two programs are going to be evenly matched in that. And then because Carolyn has this certification and I have it on her bio, I wanted to explain what it is. So a CEEAA, say that 5 times fast, is a certified exercise expert for aging adults. And this is a credential that you can earn if you're wanting to work with this population. It is outside of any sort of graduate program. It's sort of like professional development or you're extending your expertise. But there are other programs that are there certifications that you can get in specializations. And so as you move through either your occupational or physical therapy journey, you will learn about those, and you may choose to do those. But since we had someone with that certification, I wanted to let you guys know what it was. So now we're going to give kind of a general overview of what you need, what is competitive, kind of give you some conceptualization of goals to shoot for. So for GPA overall, kind of like a base average, the average overall GPA for a PT or an OT application is going to hover around the 3.60. And so an overall GPA is everything. Your English comp class, that random history class you took, your underwater basket weaving, your science classes, everything. The general overall GPA is 3.6. Now different programs vary. Ours at UTC is much higher. But on average, if you're hovering around that 3.6 range for your overall GPA, you should be fairly competitive for a decent number of programs. The science GPA is a little bit higher. It's a 3.72, and so that's going to be all of your science completed work. Stereotypically, it's biology, chemistry, physics, and math. Those are the courses that most science GPAs are computed by. Some programs may be different. I don't know, do our programs differ in the science GPA?
A little bit. We just look at the science prerequisites. So it's bio 1, for PT, it's bio 1 and 2, chem 1 and 2, physics 1 and 2, anatomy and physiology, and exercise physiology. And a lot of programs don't put the exercise phys class in there that we put in there. For OT, there are 6, and it's bio 1 and 2, anatomy, physiology, chemistry 1, and physics 1.
So again, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. And I was gonna say, and then OT also looks at 6 other prereqs from statistics, medical terminology, either sociology or anthropology, and then general psychology, abnormal psychology, and then a developmental lifespan psychology. So our OT program actually has 2 prerequisite GPAs that we look at. But that's different for other programs.
Yeah, and you'll notice we say each program is different a lot. It means to be difficult, but each program is different.
Yeah.
And so we know it's a challenging for you guys to try and figure out how to be well-rounded. And so that's why we push, find the programs you want. That is really the first step in this process. Once you decide you want to be a PT or an OT, is to narrow down your programs, because if you find all of the PT programs you're interested in only require 1 semester of physics, why would you take 2? Unless you really love physics. Some programs may require organic chemistry. Some programs won't. It really just depends on the program. And so further on in this presentation, I have a ton of resources for you guys to start identifying those programs. But we'll get to that in a second. The GRE competitive range, again, nationally is between 501 and 522, which is pretty broad. Ideally, if you're in the 507 to 515, you're good. Or 3.
3. That should be a 3.
Yep. I was just realizing this is incorrect. Typo. I will correct that before it is put out to you all. But just replace the 5 with a 3. And then required classes, again, super general. Like super general. Programs will vary, but these are kind of ones you want to hit for most. Any questions about any of this other than my glaring typo? Okay. So what you don't need. You don't need a specific major. a lot of you all may be exercise science majors, and it's a natural fit because most folks are interested in that content. So you're going to be taking all the prerequisites pretty easily. Most of them are built into the degree, and the timeline fits, but you don't have to be an exercise science major. A lot of folks that are interested in occupational therapy do psychology. A lot of physical therapy folks will major in biology. The core thing you need to remember about major is that you need to major in something that you enjoy, and that you're going to be good at, because we talked about in previous slides, they're not just running your science GPA, they're looking at the overall GPA as well. And so if you decide, you know what, I'm going to major in biology because that will make me look more competitive because my friend said that their friend majored in biology and that was the right major, and you're bad at biology, you're going to bring your overall GPA down. And if you're selecting programs that look at all science credit for GPA, then you're bringing your science GPA down. So you want to make sure you major in something that you're good at. Science.
Don't put yourself through organic if you don't have to.
Correct.
Unless like your backup plan is like a PA or something like that requires it.
Mm-hmm.
But if your backup plan is, something totally different, there's no reason to put yourself through that.
Mm-hmm. And that's where having a conversation with me will be really helpful. If you find that the PT or OT route suddenly is not for you, come chat with me. Let's talk backup options. Let's talk things. A lot of people suffer from a plan B is a whole other plan A syndrome. I wanted to be an accountant, but my backup plan is a teacher. That's not a backup plan. It's a whole separate plan. And so healthcare can be just as dangerous if you're trying to do PT, but your backup plan is PA. There's a whole lot involved in being a PA that is not required for being a PT.
Mm-hmm.
Not the same. So focus on your goal, focus on, what you want to be. And then if it doesn't work out, then we can address what to do. But more folks will fail at their ultimate goal because they're trying to ensure all of these different fail safes and they just sort of burn themselves out. So major in the thing that you feel you're going to do best in, and we'll get you there. The other big thing is you don't have to go into PT or OT as soon as you graduate. People think, I've got to do the timeline. I've got to, graduate in 4 years, so I need to apply at this time. And so even if I'm not ready, I've got to submit that application. Apply when you are the most competitive. A gap year is a year or more in between the time you've graduated undergrad and you have applied and gone to a graduate program. A lot of programs look favorably on gap years, especially if you use them right. So if you haven't really gotten a lot of shadowing and observation, a lot of folks that were geared up to apply this cycle chose to take a gap year because when the coronavirus hit, it shut down all the shadowing and observation opportunities. So they don't have those hours. Well, instead of wasting a lot of time and a lot of money applying to programs that are saying, nope, we still require those hours, I don't care, you should have prepared more. They're taking a gap year and they're looking at opportunities, maybe certifications or things that would allow them to get those hours. So they're coming back next cycle and they're applying and they're going to be more competitive. Some folks just opt to wait and do their observation hours and their all of that after they've graduated because they don't feel they can juggle the classes and the observation. So they'll do that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. Don't let the timeline that you developed 2 years ago dictate what you do. I like to cite the How I Met Your Mother syndrome. If you're familiar with the show, they filmed the first episode and the season finale at the same time. And then the show took off and kind of made its own, took on a life of its own, but they didn't refilm the finale. They just used what they had because they had filmed it so many years ago. And a lot of people ended up, feeling really cheated. Like, that's not how it should have ended. It didn't really, showcase what the show became. And that is something that can happen to students. It doesn't showcase who you are if you determine this timeline and you don't give yourself opportunities to kind of augment it to make yourself a more competitive candidate. So things to keep in mind. So the entire process takes a while. So you want to be mindful of this when you're looking at timeline. This is sort of a rough outline of kind of what you're looking at for PT or OT. Rebecca, any insights on this or any thoughts?
I think that the timeline looks good. Sometimes I'll tell people to take the GRE over Christmas break of your junior year, take it like in January, so you have that whole break to study for it. And that's just because if you need to take it again, then you can wait until this summer to take it. You can take it, I think it's like 3 or 4 times within a year, and you have to wait like 30 days in between.
There's actually,
it's expensive. Have they changed it?
Yeah, you just have to wait 90 days in between each test.
Okay. So again, if you want to take it in December, then you have those 90 days to wait and take it again in May before you apply, once the application cycle starts, like in July or late June. Because if you have a program that has a minimum GRE, you may need to take it again if you don't hit that score the first time. Our PT program does not, our OT program does. And actually we both have a minimum for the analytical writing. So if you don't hit that the first time, you want to make sure you give yourself time to take it again. And the tests are good for 5 years. So, you don't have to worry about it not being good anymore if you take it a little bit early.
Sure.
Is that for junior or senior year or like all?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is this for, do we take it during our junior or senior year or any?
I would take it like winter break of your junior year, and then April, May, right after you finish your junior year, because the application cycle is going to open that summer for the next fall. So like right now, the application cycle is open for fall of 2021. And the PT deadline is actually September 1st. So like in a week, applications for fall of 2021 will close for our PT program. So you do everything like a year out.
Majority of programs start in August. There's like, I think it's South College has a random January start date.
So does ETSU.
Okay. But most programs start in August. So if you're saying, okay, I want to graduate in May and then start my graduate program that fall, 3 months later, then you backtrack 18 months and that's when you start your application. So if you are planning on taking a gap year, then you would backtrack 18 months and that's when you would start. So whatever start date you anticipate in your mind, 18 months prior is when you need to start that application process. And ideally, you want to be ready to go when those application systems open up. I realized I did not add OatCast on here. I just put PTCast. This is what happens when you
pretty much the same time frame.
That's what happens when you put a presentation together at like 11:30 at night. Your brain gets a little fuzzy. But I will make sure to update that as well. But you really want to be ready to submit this fairly close to when the application opens up, because some programs might pull applications early. Some programs may have rolling admission. So you really just want to be ready to go when it opens up, get it in there, get it submitted. Then you don't have to worry about it.
All right, thank you.
No worries. So we talk a lot about finding the program. So what do you need to look for? These are some good tips to kind of get you going. So the biggest one is location. What area of the country interests you? What area do you think you would want to live in or not live in? Because you're going to be there for a few years. Do you have family or friends in the area? These programs are not work friendly. Like this is what you're doing. You're not working a part-time job. You're doing this. This is your job. When you're not in class, you're studying. When you're not studying, you're in labs. Like you're not of a life outside of these programs. So having family or friends in the area where you're going to school can be really helpful for support. Get that home cooked meal, maybe go do some laundry. Having people near you can be really helpful if you anticipate needing a support system. Or if you are married or you have a family, having family or friends in that area for your spouse or your family to have some connection, because they're not going to see you that much. Can you afford the cost of living? Boston is great and wonderful, but my friend who currently lives there pays like $2,800 for 400 square feet. If you can afford that, while you're also going full-time to PT or OT school, go for it. But, don't put all of your eggs in the basket of really expensive cost of living areas and then get into the program and find that you're not actually able to afford to live there, because that would be a bummer. And then, are there incentives to stay closer to home? I mentioned earlier, Georgia has, really good incentives for its residents. There are Tennessee programs that have incentives, either tuition or reserved number of seats in an incoming class for residents. So if you are a resident of a state that has really good incentives, then you really want to focus on those programs, because not only will you'll have a leg up. You may not be the most competitive, but if you are an in-state student and they reserve 90% of the class for in-state students, if you're the most competitive resident of that state, then you have a better chance of getting in than a competitive person from out of state. Do you meet the school requirements? GRE and GPA, don't apply program that has a astronomically high GRE score and yours is average. Don't put all of your eggs in that basket, because if that's the average GRE score, then more people are going to have a higher GRE score than you will, and then that may reduce your chances. Are you competitive for contact hours, for observation? Programs that put a lot of weight in observation hours, if you don't have a competitive number, then you may not be as desirable of a candidate. And so if money is a factor, because it is expensive to apply to these programs, you want to pick the programs you're going to have the most competitive edge on. And then mission fit. What's the school's sphere of influence? Does it fit their, do you fit their mission? Do they fit yours? Some programs have very specific targets where they want to help specific demographics, so they focus specifically on a certain type of care. If you are not interested in that type of care and that's their focus, then you may not be a good fit. So when they get to the point of interviews and reviewing final applicants, if there are more people that are more aligned with their mission as far as like target of care, then those people may get in over you. So just things to think about as you're looking at programs. Any other things to think on, Rebecca? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. I think that covers a lot of it. Like our PT program is a generalist program. We don't have a specific area, and you're going to have, any school that you go to, you're going to cover all the basics. So, there's certain things that you have to have for accreditation that are going to be covered, no matter where you go. But then you may have a school that has a focus beyond that on research or on a specific area. And that's the kind of thing you want to know or look at. Look at the requirements. If they say that their minimum is a 3.2 GPA like ours is, that's going to be the minimum. There's a difference between a hard minimum and a recommended. So if it says a recommended, give them a call and say, hey, I see that you recommend that I see that you have a minimum of 100 observation hours, but you recommend 250. If I have 175, what are my chances? Call and ask those kinds of questions. But if it's a hard minimum, then that's the minimum. And I say that because I see people every year who apply to our program who don't have a 3.2. And So we don't look at that applicant. If you have a 3.0 or a 2.8 or whatever, if it's below that 3.2, that's an automatic, you're out. We don't look at the application past that. So you've basically thrown away $50 to apply to our program. So make sure you look at those minimums, make sure you meet those minimums. And if it's fuzzy, call that program and ask them before you spend that money, and make sure that you are using your money wisely and investing your time and your money in the best places.
Because the thing with these centralized application services, they will allow you to apply to whatever program, and they will allow you to pay them for those programs. So there isn't a stopgap if you are not meeting the requirements.
Right, and that all that money that you pay those applications all goes to that centralized program. So none of that money comes to back to UTC or whatever. So they will let you apply to as many programs as you want to.
And gladly take your money.
Exactly.
So be wise about, the programs. So how to find a PT and OT program, mystery solved. So the pre-health advising website, we've got resources for you. And I've taken a little screenshot of what it looks like. So the guide maps tile, when you get to the UTC pre-health advising website, when you click on that, it will show you all the major healthcare programs. So for OT and PT, they're all grouped together. So you see the top part, it says Southeast Physical Therapy, Southeast Occupational Therapy. I've made what I like to call guide maps, and it shows you all the UTC specific coursework that you need. It also talks about what observation hours, what the application process is like, what a recommended timeline is, and it's a kind of front and back PDF, and it's really helpful and for you to look at. Now, if there's not a guide map for your particular program of interest, I've also linked TCAS programs and the ACOTE search. So these links will take you directly to the search functionality of these, and you will be able to search nationwide for any PT or OT programs. Now, the PTCAS program search is fantastic and super user-friendly. The OT is less desired. So it will let you search for OT masters and OT doctoral programs. But when you search for OT master's programs, it will show you all of the doctoral programs as well. So when you're searching, just good rule of thumb, if you were to go and search Georgia doctoral OT programs, it will show you nothing. But if you search the master's programs, it will show you all of the master's and all of the doctoral programs. It's real weird. So if you run into any trouble with the search functionality, definitely reach out and we'll help decipher it. But the PTCAS, that is a dream. If all search functions could be like that, we'd be in good shape. But when you guys get the presentation, the pre-health advising website is linked, but the guide map stuff, that is a picture. So that will not take you to the stuff. It's just to show you what it looks like. So brief overview. My background is in history, so I love all things history. So that's where you're going to see a lot of pictures of historical healthcare stuff. It's just fun for me. But we're going to look at all the PT and OT programs in Tennessee. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each one of these programs because, like I said, there's a lot. But to give you kind of a brief overview. So first of all, rep the home team, our physical therapy program. We are the best value. Yay! We're the best value for Tennessee. We also have 100% first time pass rate, 100% employment rate. We've got the club. I will go in and link the Instagram and the club information to this slide before I send it out to you guys. But we have a club, like we mentioned earlier. So we have a really good program, kind of the best, what can we say? But our GPA is high. This is the competitive GPA. And so all the GPAs I'm going to show you are the competitive GPA. And that means that is the average GPA of the incoming student. So you want to try and be as close to that as possible. But our GPA is real high, both PT and science. This is last year. So this is not this is the incoming class that started in August of 2020. So we'll update it next year. Again, average GRE score with the right numbers, not the 500 ones. I think I was thinking about that when I was doing that. And then
the average is a 307 right now, 306,
okay.
307.
Okay, so you heard it here first, guys.
And there's a table on the PT specific webpage that gives you 3-year averages, and then it shows you the ranges for those 3 years for everything too.
And then there's a picture of the map building in happier times when you go inside it. We have no set shadowing requirements, but we ask that you showcase a well-rounded experience. So well-rounded. I would say, looking at other programs, 2 to 3 different types of physical therapy is going to give you a well-rounded experience. If you can get that, probably 20 to 30 hours in each is a good range. Just kind of looking across the board, but Rebecca might be able to speak a little bit more specifically.
For our program specifically, yeah, we want you to get out there and see as much as you can, and enough that this is what you want to do. And I think for some people that comes very quickly. For some people, it takes a lot of time. One of the reasons that we don't have a set number of hours is there are so many programs out there that do and have very specific things that they want you to do, that for the clinicians in our area who are already serving as clinical instructors for our students, it was becoming a real burden for them in a lot of ways to be able to handle all these pre-PT students and handle the PT students at the same time. And so one of the reasons we cut back on that was for that, so that you didn't feel like you had to do 50 or 100 hours with one outpatient clinic, because it was getting sort of overwhelming. And the other part is, so many programs have such specific things that we feel like while you're trying to cover the requirements for all those other programs, you're going to hit enough for us that you're going to have the experience that you need. And there are some programs like University of Florida wants you to have, like, I can't remember, it's more than 200 hours. It may be closer to like 3 or 4, but they want you to have outpatient. They want you to have 3 different settings. They want you to have inpatient, which is really hard to get, especially right now. And our applicants were juggling so many requirements from so many schools that we said, let's just say we want you to have hours, and you do enough that this is what you want to do. And that's kind of our philosophy behind it, and that's different than a lot of programs, but our thinking is, when you know.
Good advice. So here are some other physical therapy programs. Again, these are all DPT programs. So University of Tennessee Health Science Center in Memphis, they are coming on September 4th. There will be a virtual visit. So if you are interested, definitely come check that out, talk to the program specifically, find out those hard requirements and things of that nature. They require 50 hours, hardcore. Got to do 50. You have to have 50 done before you apply. Tennessee State University in Nashville, they also have a required number. They are, fun fact, one of the 6 historically Black colleges in Tennessee. So if you want a long history lesson, I can definitely tell you later. But historically Black colleges were founded to provide college access to African Americans during segregation. And so they have a really neat history, and they're one of 6 in the state. So that's really cool. ECSU in Johnson City. If you are interested in working with veterans, this is a really good program to check into, because they have affiliations with the Veteran Hospital, which there are not, I think it's the only one in the state. So you will get to work with a lot of veterans, both folks coming from overseas that have had injuries in combat, but just, not to pop the bubble, but a lot of PTs go into thinking, I'm going to be a physical therapist to work with the wounded warriors and help these guys that have lost limbs get back on, their feet, which there are a lot of physical therapists that do, but majority of physical therapists that work with veterans, you're working with Vietnam era veterans, helping with more geriatric care. So just things to keep in mind. Belmont, which is in Nashville, this is a private religiously affiliated institution. The nice thing about private schools, though, is they don't tend to have difference in in-state and out-of-state tuition like public institutions do. Again, they're going to require the 50 hours of observation. They do have a higher GPA, kind of closer to UTC. ETSU does not have any specific number. So. And then South College, they have a PT program. They have a June and a January start, so it's a little bit more flexibility. And they are also going to be visiting virtually on the 13th. So again, an opportunity to talk with those folks, get some answers, find out, about the program. Now we're going to transition to occupational therapy. Again, repping the home team with a whole slide to itself. We have higher GPA. We have a really good graduation rate. There's discounted tuition for regional and in-state students. And then we have, because it's occupational therapy is the one that's a little bit more particular on online, right, Rebecca?
Yes. And it's been waived for right now with COVID. Typically, OT does not allow online labs and online science classes, but they've waived that from last spring at least through this year. So, but typically she wants to see those in person.
And so
that's going to vary from school to school. Again,
mm-hmm.
I mean, y'all are going to hear this so many times, but every program is different. But Memphis is the same way for PT. They don't like online science classes. And then even ETSU doesn't like you to have a combined A&P from a community college. So if you take your A&P at Chat State and you apply to ETSU for PT, then they may ask you to come back and take physiology too, or something else. So
quirks of the program. And just to touch on COVID a little bit, schools are taking this one semester at a time. The nightmare that was the summer of trying to negotiate how to get students through the application cycle when tests were being shut down and programs were shutting down, it was an adventure. So we're going to see programs make semester by semester declarations on things like online courses. So I just want to encourage you, if you are in sciences now, if you were in online sciences in spring, if the majority of science courses are still online in the spring of 21, we're hopeful that they're not, but we'll deal in realities that they may be. These programs are going to make determinations. And so the best thing to do once you have that short list is to go to the program websites, because even though there are national organizations overseeing OT and PT, they do not make the decisions for the programs. They are sort of a unifying body, but they are not a body that says, hey, you have to do this. So programs are going to make individual determinations. We've seen, I would say about 95% of programs have some sort of leniency in regards to online coursework with COVID, because over 60% of colleges and universities are at least hybrid for the fall term. So don't stress about being in online sciences with those not being accepted. Once we get through the sort of the woods and we get out onto the other side where we're seeing more schools being fully face-to-face, then that's where you may want to make sure that you're in a face-to-face institution. But again, check with me, go on program websites, but for the most part, you're going to be okay. Occupational therapy programs. Belmont has an ODT program. They do have a master's program, and it is only open for that should say OTA again. 11:30 at night, guys. But it is only open for those assistants. So there is a pathway. There's one. LMU, Lincoln Memorial, they have a new program that's coming online. It should be admitting its first class this coming spring. And so they have campuses in Harrogate and Knoxville. So keep an eye out for you sophomores and freshmen that are just starting to look. By the time you guys are ready to apply, these programs should be graduating their first class or close to. So you should see their numbers. Tennessee State has a master's, and they are actually the first historically Black college to open a student-run PT and OT clinic. It's really cool. So check that out if you're interested to see what that looks like. And then we've got the GPA listed. Obviously, we don't have GPA numbers for LMU because they don't have them yet. UT Health Science Center has a Master's of Occupational Therapy. They will be visiting virtually September 24th. So you can come meet with them and learn more about their program. And then Milligan College is, again, a private religiously affiliated college. So those are going to be smaller, and then they're not going to have the in-state, out-of-state determinations a lot of times. Georgia, so these are going to be fast and furious. So there is a link for a day in the life of a PT student, so you can check that out. North Georgia, Emory University. Note about Emory, your prerequisites cannot be older than 5 years. So just be mindful if you're planning on taking a gap year or you've suddenly changed your life's goal and you have some older science classes. If Emory's on your list, you may be taking that class again. And then they do have a larger observation hour requirement along with North Georgia. Georgia Southern, if you are a Georgia resident, you should apply to Georgia Southern. Their in-state tuition is really, really reduced. So it is a really good deal for folks that are Georgia residents. Brenau is a private school. They have a 50-50 in-state, out-of-state ratio. Again, all of these guys are hovering. They've got some required hours. Georgia Southern is recommended. Mercer, they have very specific observation hour requirements. You can see that. Augusta has a really high Georgia residency admission. So if you're a Georgia resident, again, Augusta is a good place to go. And then Georgia State also has some hefty hours. They're also affiliated with a lot of healthcare systems, so it's a really good network to get involved in. Occupational therapy for Georgia, Augusta and Georgia State. For now, they have a whole lot going on. They have various campuses, they have various options, they have various degrees, so you can read that slide further, but you know, lots of variety. And then Alabama for physical therapy, South Alabama. They do require one upper level biology course, which is not something like immunology or cell biology, so just keep in mind there. Alabama State, Samford University, again, this is a private school, so it's not going to have the in out-of-state difference. UAB is a really good school. They have waived the observation hour requirement entirely for the 2020-2021 admission cycle. Do not bank on this, future applicants, but should they make determinations, again, they're going to update their website. Another fun fact about UAB is they don't require the GRE. Alabama State, graduation rates listed. They've got pretty good graduation rates. South Alabama has a lovely virtual tour, so if you want to check out South Alabama from the comfort of your home. And then Tuskegee also has some Master of Occupational Therapy programs. UAB has a lot of occupational therapy going on. They have a post-professional ODT program. And a note about their masters. So currently, the only way to go straight from undergrad into an OT program at UAB is to go through their Master of Science. However, they are transitioning that to an ODT program. And so they're anticipating starting that in 2021. So again, for you sophomores and freshmen and even juniors possibly, once you are ready to apply, UAB may have a full doctoral entry-level program for you. So we have come to the end of this very long slide. Let me stop the sharing and